Okay, now we're recording.
Hey, great. It's 5:36 on Thursday, November 11th. I'd like to bring the Equity Task Force for USD116 to order. Instead of doing roll call, I'm just going to read the participants. So because it's an electronic meeting. So we have John Gutzmer, Jennifer Avery Tatum, Micah Jackson, Tori Exum, Adriana Choa, Angie Franklin, Deanna Webster, Elizabeth Smith Andre, Elizabeth Ladd, Alvila Kone, Katie Madigan, Kim Norton, Ruth, Sandy Lavin, Shonda Shear, Tom Majors, Tanya Deacon, and Trisha Kasem. Did I miss anybody? Okay, great.
I think Todd joined at the last minute.
All right. Yep. Hi, Todd.
Hey, I'm here.
All right. Are there any citizens who want to give citizen statements tonight?
Well, did we approve the agenda?
Oh, okay. I don't have like the formal
Okay, so
agenda.
yeah.
I'll move for approval of the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
That's
All right. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Remember, you can do your reaction button.
Oh, yeah, you can. Yes, exactly. You can do that too.
Mhm.
Great. Awesome. Anybody opposed? I think the ayes have it. All right. We have an agenda. Any citizens tonight wish to address the Equity Task Force? John, is anybody attached to watch?
Oh, Ruth says she emailed her. Sorry, let me pull it up really quick. I've been in another meeting for the last 2 hours. Okay.
You're Bereshnikov here. I also emailed my statement.
Okay, I've got Ruth's up and then I can read them, Paul, if that's okay with you.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Dear members of the Equity Task Force, my name is Ruth Kantorovitz. Sorry, Ruth, if I didn't say that correctly. I am a parent of a USD116 student. I'm writing to raise the committee's awareness to the fact that the audit reports produced by Dr. Dubiel's consulting firm are flawed and substandard. Although Dr. Dubiel did give the committee sample audit reports, I found a few of them online. Attached to this email are several equity audit reports done by Dr. Dubiel, including one from McLean County, Unit 5. From this sample of audit reports, you can see that their data analysis is merely a collection of tables from the district's databases, converted to bar charts, followed by naive interpretations of the data. Their analysis neglects even the most basic statistics and fails to recognize what is statistically significant. In several instances, when the data did not show inequity between white and Black students, the data analysts use false statistics to claim inequity. The opinion of qualified U of I professors who reviewed these audit reports is that their data analysis is amateuristic and full of errors. At its best, it will cause a diversion of resources and energy. At worst, it is just grifting or fraud. In addition, you can see that the reports are not personalized for the district. Across the reports, the findings, recommendations, and even in the description of the focus group results use the same wording. The reports do not attempt to find a cause for the disparities. That, of course, would require individualized attention to what is unique about the districts and a more sophisticated statistical analysis. Regarding the outcome of Dr. Dubiel's equity action plan, there are no examples showing success in any school district that implemented it. When Dr. Dubiel was asked by the BOE and the task force to give examples of districts that implemented her action plans and have been successful, Dr. Dubiel answered, "I'm not going to mention a specific district. As districts are committed to carrying off the plan, they will be successful. I have evidence of multiple organizations that are deep into their action plan, and it is as successful as the team is willing to do the work." In other words, there's no objective quantitative way to measure the success of her action plan. Success is measured by how much work was done, not by how effective it was. That is A for effort. Indeed, the state's data shows that the districts that used Dr. Dubiel's equity action plan had no success in reducing the disparities. However, our district's goals, as expressed in the equity policy you wrote, are all about reducing measurable disparities, for which we have data for academic performance, graduation percentage rates, disciplinary consequences, enrollment in advanced classes, etc. Our district wants to fix the disparities, not just feel good about making the effort. Therefore, Dr. Dubiel's services are incompatible with our district's needs. Finally, I urge you to read the district's 1998 equity audit report to see what a personalized and professional equity audit report looks like. Sincerely, Ruth Kantorowicz. Okay. And we have one from Yuli. Well, this is, I've got to make that a little bit bigger, small type. Paul, do you want me to read this one too? Or I could share my screen and you can read it? Okay. Dear members of the board, my name is Yuli Barishnikov. I live in Urbana and work at the U of I teaching mathematics there. My position is that retaining the vendor Systemic Educational Equity, LLC, is a frivolous purchase, squandering an opportunity and wasting resources much needed elsewhere. Let me outline why I think so. I will be happy to share with the committee and the board materials supporting my research. The equity issues in our district are obvious to anyone caring to look. While averaging poor academic performance and lagging in academic outcomes, they are even worse for the children from disadvantaged groups. To address this or any problem, we need to study it. Not knowing what would have an impact, shall we ramp up dyslexia testing, ? Shall we expand free or after school programs? Shall we change the elementary math curriculum? Forces the district fly blind, looking for solutions to problems that don't exist and completing, failing at solving those that do. As the Equity Task Force of USD116 stated, tackling equity issues, quote, requires an understanding of the root causes of the outcome disparities within our society, unquote. Close quote. So what the district decided to do to address this issue, they decided to hire a company to do an equity audit. In fact, scores of other districts did the same. One, perhaps the only good outcome of these numerous equity audits by the Systemic Educational Equity LLC is that now we can read those equity reports. I checked 3 random ones, 2 school districts in Greater Chicago, 1 in Normal. Pretty different in their sizes, population, economy, and schools. You would be hard pressed, however, to discern that from the audits themselves. The reports, each of a document of 100 to 150 pages, look remarkably similar and also vaguely familiar. After a reflection, I realized that they remind me most of a bloated course project created by a C- student, hoping to produce something looking professional and elaborate. To check my perception, I ran these documents through a plagiarism checker. It returned hundreds of copy phrases, some common between all documents, some only between subsets. Some self-plagiarisms I can understand. All documents start with a poorly written theoretical section on the essence of educational inequities. Have we examined everything, all with an equity lens? Complete with the obligatory cartoon showing persons of different height watching a show from behind a fence. In itself, no big deal. No one is planning to read this section. The second section is the equity audits has this permanent feature of a bad project report, plots and tables, bloatware. In this case, the data were lifted from the state and district websites and turned into useless bar charts, sometimes corrupted in the process. About 40% of the report volume goes here. The third part of the equity audits contains the results of work that the Systemic Educational Equity LLC actually performed. Here, focus groups were formed to address vague questions on how welcoming or not the school is, or how accepted or not the students or parents feel. It is hard to parse anything definitive from these questions. The actual knowledge of what causes inequity of outcomes seems to be carefully avoided. We find nothing in terms of the process or of screening the focus groups, how they were conducted, etc. Where the self-plagiarism is especially glaring and galling is the last section, the findings. Needless to say, the findings for all the districts were similar. A copy-paste galore, but this is, of course, to be expected. Shamelessly, the equity audits insist that verbatim, equity work and development is never ending. There is no destination to it. Nothing can be done, and the struggle should continue indefinitely, presumably while subscribed to Systemic Educational Equity LLC services. I could continue all day, but won't, as I hope the picture is clear. The so-called equity audits are sham, fraudulent products sold by an unscrupulous vendor to foolish customers. The guilty party here are, of course, the school districts failing to do a minimal due diligence and to deploy a modicum of common sense. But this waste of public funds and the price tag for the audit is around $40,000, from which I know enough to hire, say, dyslexia specialists for a year, changing life trajectories of a dozen of disadvantaged kids. Is not the main reason that makes me livid. It is the travesty of pretending to do the work of racial and economic justice while corrupting the well of goodwill the people have towards the absolutely necessary effort. Who would trust the school district the next time when they tell us of a study that inequity is needed? Who will believe them? Last remark, it would be tempting to ascribe the sham of Systemic Educational Equity, LLC, to critical race theory, ran amok. This is clearly not the case. If anything, systemic educational equity are just using a market opportunity. They are job creators, feeling the societal need to address the injustice. They cook up a similar remedy and went on a sales campaign. They play by the rules, even copyrighted the phrase 5 strands of systemic equity to maintain their precious intellectual property. Like with all snake oil merchants, it is up to us citizens to stop them. If the board won't do it, the failure is on them. I urge you to take action. Those are the only 2 written public comments.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right, first topic tonight is 5 lab demonstration.
All right, so Tanya is here. Welcome, Tanya. She's not normally with our group, but Tanya is our director of ESSER-based programs. So Tanya is going to kind of do a demonstration. We're going to talk a little bit. So you all saw, I sent kind of a list of things that we could talk about data related. A lot of our data is in this new warehouse tool, the data warehousing tool that we're super excited about it. So we've had a demo at the board level. Was that at the last meeting or the meeting before last, maybe?
Before last.
We now have some of our own data in. So you guys are going to be like the first to actually get to see it. So yay. So Tanya's not going to drill all the way down into all of the data pieces because right now we're open publicly. So we don't want to share any student data. Those would be things that we would talk about, like if we were in a closed session and look at some of those deep dive data points. So today she's just going to give us a little bit of an overview. So I'm going to pull up our note-taking document and kind of take notes as Tanya's going through there. Other people can take notes because we want to make sure we're creating a really thorough, rich list of the data that we're going to collect for the purposes of the audit. Okay. Question.
Jennifer, we actually, before we go into the depth of it, in previous week, we've been doing this for several months. We have actually the fact that we're a group and that we've been working together has given us the opportunity to discuss topics and to improve on what we're doing. And listening to you reading the letters from Ruth and Yuli, I find them extremely disturbing. And I don't know how others felt about it, but I think that I would like to propose that we surely discuss this, because when we heard the presentation maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I have to admit that I didn't do the due diligence in terms of partly because I didn't feel it was my responsibility, but probably was to be a little bit more inquisitive about what are they doing and what kind of product are we committing to buy. And it looks to me that Ruth and Yule have actually done this, and they're raising extremely important points that I don't feel comfortable without addressing them. I'm not sure whether the points that they're raising are right or wrong, but I think that proceeding without discussing it wouldn't be the right approach. If we think that our approach is critical thinking, and we think that we are going to be it's going to be evidence-based. I would like to know what others thinks about it and whether or not they were disturbed with what they heard. Maybe I'm too innocent and delicate and I was disturbed, but I would like to know if others feel similarly.
So
And I would be happy to tell me, Felipe, you're wrong. Don't worry, this is so cool, and we can move on.
Sure. So I'll start, and I did get a couple emails that I responded to. So I think the important thing to remember is we're the customer. So I can't really speak to what happened in other districts because this is Urbana. So I can't really speak to what the people in McLean County did or in the other districts in the North Shore area. But I know in our district, we will do our due diligence. We will make sure that anybody doing work for us is giving us a product that we want. I think we'll hold whoever is working with us, will hold their feet to the fire and say, this isn't what we want. This is what we want to see. And this is what we paid for. I feel like that is the work of the committee. That's our job to make sure that if there are data pieces that are being misrepresented, it's our responsibility to catch those. We're not looking for a cookie cutter, but we want a facilitator that is going to work with us directly, that is going to be in person, that is going to be passionate about what we're doing and work with us. So this person has worked with districts all over the state and is very reputable. So,
but can anybody actually disproves the concerns that to me were, these were very specific and fact-based. I work in academia, and the kind of plagiarism that that Ruth and Yuli were claiming is to me, as face value, is simply unacceptable. I mean, if I were to produce a report like that, I couldn't work with anybody or hire anybody that is producing something like that. So if their claims are true, this is serious. So please tell me that they're wrong. This is actually what I want to tell me, that there's nothing to be concerned because we made the right choice. And because this is like this is the first time that I'm buying this product, so I'm completely ignorant about this. But I understand about plagiarism and understand about reports and research, and these are all of the red lines flashing at the same time here.
Sure. Well, this is the first that I've heard of plagiarism. I mean, we did not put the reports into and run them in that way. I mean, we looked at several of the reports, and you're right, they are similar because, we're school districts, and most school districts across the state are using the same data. Everyone's using MAP data, and everyone is kind of using some of those similar systems. So it doesn't surprise me that when you look district to district, that some of that data would look similar. We've not done that deep of an exploration into looking specifically at plagiarized statements across some of the action plans that we looked at, or the audits that we looked at.
If I could make a clarification, I think this isn't an academic paper. So
Right.
I think in academic papers, if you are saying something you said in a different paper, even if it's yourself, you're required to cite your other paper, even if it's me quoting something I said in a different one. This is a report to a customer where the level of expectation for citations and are not the same as an academic paper.
I would also suspect that if you ran a similar analysis on the required yearly financial audit that the district gets, you would find very, very, very similar phrases being used every single year, and probably even more so across the other districts that they report on.
But as far as the data goes, that obviously should be specific to our district. In addition to any focus groups, the dialogue between the individuals should be specific to the groups within our district.
I would like to, so this is William Villaflor. I would like to back up Felipe too of, I think my initial reaction to the community members' comments was concerning. And I do see the merit in having similarities between language, especially your own language between different documents. And I think regardless of whether it's an academic paper or a report or whatever genre of writing, I think the statement of having a lack of differentiation and personalization within the action steps and action plans for districts is a little bit concerning for me, especially since Urbana School District is different from, let's say, McLean County, or I think Normal was another school district that they had cited. And so I would like to back up Felipe's comments of just a little bit of concern of the lack of personalization within that report company.
Does anybody else have any other comments on this? Okay. Yeah, this is likely going to come up for a vote fairly soon at a board meeting. So if anybody wishes to, I guess, continue to express their concerns, they could express it to the board in that forum.
And Felipe, and I appreciate you bringing it up. I guess we want a report that is not just about numbers and charts and tables. The data is really important. But I feel like the conversations that the data that we're going to get, the qualitative piece, and the fact that this person does do a quantitative and a qualitative district level and school specific kind of dig into the data, and the focus group piece is what's most exciting to me, is the conversations that we're going to be able to have with students and parents and family members. I think are just as important as all the tables and graphs and all the numbers. I don't want to discount that, because that is all very important, as we're going to look at tonight when we look at 5 labs here soon. But I think pairing it with the qualitative piece is just as important to me, if not more important, to get the voices of our people from the district in the spaces.
Well, thanks for taking the time to discuss this. I would, thank you for, I appreciate that the fact that you feel more comfortable, and this is, of course, the stuff you work on. So I'll to your expertise, but I think that given that this is an important decision, and it's important to move fast, but I don't think we need to rush. I would encourage other people to, research this a little bit, make sure that we're comfortable, because Jennifer, I understand that, at the end we are the clients.
Yes.
This is like when you hire a service to do something in your house, even if you're gonna avoid headaches if you make sure that you start hiring the right person.
Sure.
So if we have any suspicion, or, well, not any suspicion, if we feel that this might not serve the best interests of Urbana, maybe we should, rethink this, or maybe invite other people to bring a proposal. I understand that at the end of the day, really what we need as a district is the data, is the results, probably not necessarily the suggestions of how we proceed, because maybe we might want to decide ourselves. But I would encourage others to, and maybe all of us, to investigate this further, and maybe discuss this more openly at the next board meeting before the vote, to make sure that we're all comfortable doing this. And we didn't rush. And if it turns out that it's not the right fit, maybe it's okay to wait a few more months until we find the right one. But thank you for taking the time. I think it also increased one of the issues that and of course I'm probably I'm the only parent in this venue, and the only one. Oh, sorry, Kari. They're not. Yeah, and but let me say I'm probably the only one who is not subject to. Anyway, so I think I'm the only one who is like has no freedom. The one that has no freedom to dissent.
Yes.
Right. And
Well,
and,
everybody has freedom to dissent. I mean, anybody in this group that.
without consequences. That's what I meant.
Yes. And everyone in this group has freedom to dissent without consequences. So yeah,
And that's why I usually try to be more vocal, about this. I'll be happy if we continue discussing this. Maybe this is the right path. I just want to make sure that we're on the right path. Thank you for listening.
No, I appreciate that too, Philip. I mean, honestly, I have concerns as well. I suspect, though, that the intersection of people who are extraordinarily skilled at, survey methodology and in compiling statistics, and people who are very good at managing a disparate group of people in a focus group, the intersections of those two groups are probably tiny.
It's tons of such people in the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign.
This is not public comments. I'm so sorry, Mr. Brishikoff. This is for the members of the committee to talk at this point.
and again, I just want to reiterate what you said at the beginning, Felipe. I feel like that the reason this team was brought together was to make a recommendation, and we all wear multiple different hats. And so I feel like as a group, it is our responsibility to make sure that the report that we end up with is what we want it to be, and that it includes everything that we want, that there are no hidden messages, that there's nothing left out, that and we continue to push whoever works with us, in whether it is in this instance or any of our professional, we work with a lot of professional development providers. We hire people to provide professional services all the time, and they give us what we want, and we decide what we're looking for. So that I think that's part of the role of this group too.
So this is gonna come up for vote next Tuesday, I guess?
Next Tuesday. So we're gonna, yes, the contract to enter into the relationship with Dr. Dubio.
So Paul, given that you're the president, I will strongly suggest that you make sure I think that for the sake of transparency, I mean, we're doing something very delicate here. And if we mess this up, most of the credibility of this panel is gonna be tainted. And then our work is not gonna, it's gonna be discredited. So it's in our own best interest that this is not only is good, that it's also that it looks good, because if there's doubts about the credibility of the audit that we're gonna be making, then everything that we're gonna base on it is gonna be on a shaky foundation.
I understand that, and I can guarantee that this discussion will be carried forward during the board. This just won't be a rubber stamp vote. We will actually talk about this.
Okay, are we ready to move on? Anybody else have any comments, questions?
I have a question, and it's just kind of a simple yes or no, because I don't want to stop us from moving forward, but have any of the people that have brought forth concerns, either from the committee or from community members or from any other stakeholders, have they suggested a different company to use? Or is it just people kind of having questions and concerns about this particular company? I don't know if that's been addressed. I haven't been at all of the meetings for scheduling conflicts. And so you don't have to go into detail. If I miss something, I can review another Zoom. So I didn't know if it was a yes or no, if other people are bringing suggestions forward on who else to look at.
No specific committee was recommended instead in any public discourse I've seen.
And none have been emailed to me separately, so. Okay, other questions? All right, so this is exciting. I'm really excited I know I'm putting Tanya on the spot. She's like, oh no. But yeah, I'm really excited about our next conversation. So no matter who we're working with, and again, as a group, we decided that we do not have the capacity within our team to do an internal audit. So we've made that decision. I'm hoping people aren't changing their minds about that, because I don't think this team wants to take that on. We decided as a group that we want to work with someone from the outside. So whoever we work with, we're going to have a list of pretty comprehensive data and what we want to be included as part of the audit. So that includes discipline data, parent engagement data, academics, our benchmark data, all of those pieces, right? So we have to kind of generate a list as a team of what data do we feel, what are the low hanging fruit data pieces and factors that we want to include, and then kind of dig a little deeper into the things that maybe are not the low hanging fruit, things we don't always talk about. So to start us off with that, though, we have been working with a data warehousing tool, and for the last several weeks, actually, they've been working with Kim and John and Tanya, who's not normally part of our group, but here tonight, to get some of our data uploaded. And so Tanya's going to do a little demo, and we're going to go from there.
Thank you, Dr. Ivory Tatum, and thank you everybody for allowing me to pop in tonight and just share some of the work that's been taking place behind the scenes. I do want to give a big thank you to John Gutzmer and his tech department. They have spent a lot of time helping us to clean up data and to make sure it's demonstrating accurately. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everybody see it okay? Okay, we're going to look at just a few pieces of the program tonight. It's quite extensive. It has several areas that you can wander into and perhaps get lost for hours as I'm going through things. If John or Kim, if you have anything you want to add, or Dr. Ivory Tatum, please let me know, and I can try to drill in a different direction. This is our program. It's 5 Lab, and we have a toolbar that gives us an overview of the tools within it. The first one is called guided analysis, and we're just going to hit on a few of the major areas in here tonight, because again, we could kind of get lost in all the information that is in this program. Right now, all of the data that you see in the next demonstration is what's been pulling from Skyward on a nightly basis. So part of what's been going on is to make sure that across the district, we're being consistent with our data entry, and then also making sure that what we are seeing is what we can actually work with. So I paused a little bit here so that the main screen could jump out. Our enrollment, if we take a look, there's a little bit of a summary over here on the right. When we take a look across the graphs, I will tell you that if there's this little play symbol up here in the left corner, that means that we can drill down a bit more and look at some more detailed data. I'd like to give you an overview of this screen first, and then we can pop into one of the schools and take a look at some of the data that is in there. This shows our district by grade level. And as we rotate down a little bit, we have our enrollments in the schools. And we've noticed in the last few days, our numbers have fluctuated. I think I heard in a meeting today that we've had another 30 students register just in the last week. So we did see the numbers adjust in here to reflect those. As we scroll down the page a little bit more, we take a look at our percentage of students by race. I want to scroll a little more so they can both be side by side, and also have our enrollment numbers by race. We have on the screen right now special ed status, and we also have limited English proficiency. I should tell you that everything you see on this screen is something that comes standard from the company. So while the data is all ours, these are some areas that a lot of school districts have designated as their primary data points to look at for discussion. We can always rearrange things as we need to, as you'll see in a little while. I'm going to go ahead and pop down a little bit farther. You can see that we can break down by percentages for low income. We can take a look at gender. We can look at ethnicity. There are lots of different features within the program. I'm going to scroll up here just for a little bit. And let's go ahead and take a look at, I see Dr. Jackson out there. So let's go ahead and, if it's all right, we'll pop hers up. Here's Yankee Ridge. They have 357 students. When I click on their bar, it drills down. First, I can tell you up here in the top, it'll tell you what you've drilled down by. So we can always backtrack if we need to find a spot if we move on and there's questions. We have enrollment by grades. So you can see in that particular building, the numbers. Again, the number for the whole school. The mouse, if you haven't noticed, also pops up little screen tips as we walk through. In this particular elementary school, we can see the breakdown of percentage of students by race. and again, the actual numbers. We can look at the special ed enrollments, how many students have IEPs at this particular building. And again, how many students have been set up with EL services. As we scroll down, you can also see the incomes. We can see gender and then ethnicity for some more numbers if we wanted to dig a little deeper. I'll back out and let's pick the high school real quick. Again, as we take a look, our freshman class is the largest class. So as we take a look at some of the information, sometimes it's helpful to look at percentages to get a better idea. Sometimes you actually want the numbers. As we take a look again by race, we can see how our makeup is at the high school building. Again, with our IEPs and our LEPs. And then down below a little bit more with our enrollments, percents by gender and ethnicity. And we can do this for all of the buildings, including the early childhood center. I'm not sure if people caught that one. We'll drill down to one that might have a little bit more interest as we're taking a look at our topics. Discipline in the district. As a district overall, we've had 269 discipline incidents so far this year, with students with discipline 167. So that would imply that we have some repeat offenders in some situations. Again, we break it down by schools. And I think, Kim, if you could confirm for me, these are primarily offenses that resulted in a suspension of some sort?
Right, this would be in school or out of school suspensions, and this data is taken directly from Skyward. We do have some other platforms such as Swiss or Behavior Flip at Urbana Middle School, but this is the information that's been entered for in school, out of school suspensions via Skyward.
Okay, I think we have a hand raised. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes, so I have a technical question, if you indulge me. So at the moment you are pulling this, so the 5Lab, which I guess is the company that is doing this, is the source of truth of this is some kind of database that is maintained at Skyward, right? So the data is actually owned by the school district, right? And they are collecting it and rendering for an easier display, right?
That's correct. We have
No.
a contract with them, as we do with some other places, that is FERPA, SOPA compliant. So, but yes, this is the warehouse of our data. It's synced nightly through an upload that we've set up.
And I have a short follow-up question. At the moment, you have a view which is for the current year. I'm assuming that it's possible to have views for years in the past as well, or is this only for the current year?
Right now, the data that we're uploading is the current year data. Some of the data, like free reduced and some other things, are vectored data where they have, along with the data point, they have like a start and end date. That might be possible as something to do in the future. But right now, this is just our current data.
And is there any plan to make the data from previous years available?
That's something we can look into.
I mean, I guess the question that I have is what is the purpose of the visualization?
So
right now, we just started this year, so it's just got our this year data, but that should be something that we could add is previous year data.
And I was just going to add that by pulling in multiple data sources, it allows us to get a glimpse of the whole child from all different angles. So the panorama data we can include, map data, as I mentioned, behavior flip or Swiss data that also has discipline data, or restorative data on student intervention. So there's a lot of different pieces that we can put in here. Even once we finally get everything current, then it may be that we see, you know, there's some other components that we want to make sure we have in here. Access assessments as well. So we can continue to add other components.
And may I ask, is one of the objectives to see variations over time? Like, you know, I naively would like to immediately see, you know, how does 2021 compares to 2019 and 2018? Are there any trends that are worrisome? Is that the objective of having this in the, like, a long-term desire? Okay.
Absolutely. This is a starting point for us. And actually, as we're starting to enter our map data in here, you can see that it's blank from prior years because this is the first year that we've conducted the assessment. But absolutely, we want to be able to have that trend data. And, you know, we haven't had all of that in the past. So that's going to be a huge advantage for us.
And I think, I'm not sure if there should be, it's a longitudinal analysis. It might be in a different dashboard, but there's a longitudinal analysis that lets you see year-on-year data. But again, as I mentioned, right now we've just uploaded our current year data.
And Tanya's going to, at some point, Felipe, show us kind of how we can use this data to make decisions, like that whole child approach for our multi-tier systems of supports and when we're making intervention decisions for students. So like I think you were going to show us a PDF of that at some point, so we can see how we can look at individual students. And
Yep. And when we met with the company, John, they did ask at one point if we wanted to import historical data. And I think our biggest hurdle was just making sure everything syncs up with this year's data first and then start to work backwards. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. That is absolutely correct. So
okay, so that is a long-term goal. There's just a lot of details that go into getting it set up.
And even just this past week, we've fixed some things, like the race was initially coming in with the federal race codes, and we had to do a lot of cleanup work to get our local race codes to match with the federal race codes.
And there is so much data in here that as we look at our different screens and modules, when we're trying to run it past several groups so that they can let us know if numbers are looking accurate, if it's something we need to jump back to and take another look at to make sure that everything's being pulled appropriately and represented accordingly. Something that's really one of the perks that has come up in a few conversations when we're looking at our discipline, what is our biggest focus? What should be our first focus? Where are we seeing some trouble spots? And it not only talks about the type, but it will talk about locations as well. And so then we can see this year already an area that we want to beef things up is in our hallways and the breezeway. And I believe both the administrators at the high school and the middle school are already working on that. So. We'll take a peek at one more guided analysis. Part of being college and career ready is to make sure that students are participating in different programs. And so we have a spot here at the moment from the company that's grabbing some of our data. I would say that this is probably not completely up to date yet because it is missing some programs, but we will go ahead and make sure that we're catching those and bringing that into play. But that just kind of gives you some examples of the different opportunities that we offer our students. And again, broken down by some different demographic groups within the district.
Tanya, this is activities, clubs, basically everything then, right? It looks
And
like
it's including
sports
and after school programs.
Okay.
Yep. Not all are entered yet, so that's why we don't see everything listed down here / 21st century, but we're still getting that data tied in. Okay, I'm going to jump over to dashboards next, and let's look at just the overview. We'll be able to make some dashboards down the road, but right now these are dashboards that have come standard with the product. And this is hopefully similar data to what we looked at just on the guided analysis area. Again, with our schools, breaking down the information. If we wanted to take a look and see, let's take this one. As you can see, the plus sign coming up means that we can't click on these bars, which means the data isn't quite set up yet. I'm going to jump to, they have the company, what they deem to be equity audit. And I believe this is something that the team might look at to determine if it is representing everything that we are concerned about. And the company is flexible as far as how we can move things around and make sure that it's representing the data that we're looking for. We can click across here a little bit. We've got our attendance and we can go in, we can choose to sort by different schools. We can go ahead and jump into student characteristics and run filters looking for specific groups to look for equity, to check and see what does the attendance look like. You can see that right now we're on the district setting, given 4,296 students broken down. Over here, this number, 1,539, is what they are saying that we have for chronically absent students in our district. The data can be a little bit challenging at the moment if we have some carryover from students and COVID and having been out of school, working to redefine some of those pieces. SWD would be our students with disabilities. And there can be overlap in all of these areas. So that's something that we would want to think about as we look at information as well. I'll just kind of scroll across just a little bit because some of these repeat a little since we're just getting started. We know that there's an error in this area, so that's something that the company's working on. And then they do provide a tab for resources. So there's resources that they suggest, and if we have anything that we have used as your team has made decisions, then we have an opportunity to make sure that we have that listed as well. And then I'm going to jump the last area here.
Tanya, can I ask you a question? So
Sure.
can you go back to that equity? Am I muted? Can you go back to the equity? So basically what you're saying is as we kind of pull all the data pieces that we want to make sure are part of our audit, we can upload them here as well, like 5 essentials. I think we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. And okay. Okay.
That's my understanding. We
Okay.
haven't seen it yet because we've been focused on Skyward and syncing up the data to make sure what we have is accurate.
Mhm.
But we know that we sent in the NWEA map data last week. So we know that they're working on that. And I do have a PDF of the report to share as well.
Okay.
I was going to jump into Explore real quick because it's my understanding this is the area where we're going to have the most flexibility as far as if we have more categories that we want to include aside from what they have. And then other points of data that can be run side by side to see does one impact the other. I was going to try to, I'm giving a warning that while students' names will show up in just a moment, there is no data. So unless the company has done something in the last hour, it should just be data that doesn't have anything associated yet, but more to show you that we can set up for whatever we might want to look for. Earlier today, we played around a little bit and we saw that there were a lot of great topics in here. Data pulls, for instance, we might want to make sure we're keeping an eye on our freshmen on track. Right now, we don't have data compiled. That helps us to align that. So that's why it says not on track. It's defaulting to they haven't earned the required number of credits or passed the required number of classes. But as we get more of that information entered into the system, we also, and I'm just trying to scroll down so you can see what some of the options are.
And just to clarify, these are not students that are not on track. Right now, every single kid in our district would show that. I just want to,
Yep.
I know we're not posting this video, but just in case
No.
somebody sees the name and they all say that, because.
Yep.
So, yep, okay.
That's why, and I went ahead and I'm picking two that I knew didn't have data. So that way, which might be counterintuitive to a demonstration, but I just wanted to make sure we kept it fair and that we weren't disclosing anybody's information.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to jump over for a moment. And here is a picture. The company has not done a super formal individual report yet. So we are part of their beta test for putting it together. And so we've been working with them to help develop a report that would give us all the data about.
Can you make that bigger, Tanya, like on
I
your?
can
Yep.
sure try. How about that?
Perfect. Okay, that's a little better, yeah.
Oh. So you can see we've got our demographic data that will fill in across the top. We will have our state and national assessment scores. We got that pulled and it's ready to go. They just haven't entered it yet. And if they had, it might not be here at the moment just for privacy. And then for NWEA MAP, they started out, they were thinking we had more than just this year. So they'll be adjusting it to represent just this school year. We have other programs in the district, such as Fontes and Pinnell has the BAS, Benchmark Assessment Screener. We have Panorama, our social emotional software that will be able to set all of them up as puzzle pieces here in this report. So when we're going into meetings or when we need to have an RTI Tier 3, MTSS, special ed, we'll have all the data, hopefully, on a student on one page. So that way we're not going between a bunch of different reports. We can actually just have it localized for discussion and hopefully make our time with the parents, with the team, incredibly productive because of the lack of papers that you shift around for. Yeah,
And to have it all in one spot. I know this looks like it could be a middle schooler. So if their team wanted to sit down and talk about the student, they would be able to have all of these things plus additional things that they might want to add in at some point in the future, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
I just wanted to give kind of a broad overview so you could see the tools that we have in place that hopefully your group will find useful as you make discussions and decisions.
Questions for Tanya? Did anybody want to see anything? Again, we're just kind of trying to look at district level data. I know there are a lot of places, Tanya didn't do this, but I think every point where there's a district data point, there's a school specific data point, and then you can go even further to teacher and then all the way down to student, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Questions? Oh, Felipe.
Sorry, I have a completely random housekeeping question. I don't know if John or you are the host. Could you enable chat in the Zoom call? Because I get messages, but I cannot reply.
Oh, I didn't know it was not enabled.
All right, thank you.
I turned it on. It was
Thanks.
off from earlier.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. Any school people? Do you guys have any questions about? I know it's the first time you've seen this too, so your counterparts have not even had a chance to see this yet. And the board has only seen a demo without our actual data in it because it just, I think today or yesterday, right, Tanya, that it?
Yes, just in the last few days, it's kind of come together. Hot off the press.
Anybody else? Oh. Okay. Thanks, Tanya. You're welcome to stay with us as long as you like, or if you're ready to go. I know we've got a little bit more to talk about here, and so you're welcome to stay. All right, so I'm back in our notes. So I do have a favor, Tanya. I was kind of watching and typing at the same time. So I started a list: enrollment data, discipline data, activity summary, attendance, absenteeism. I was getting ready to type state assessment data, local assessment data. So I was going to kind of go through and I'm trying to make like a bulleted list of all the pieces that we can get out of 5 labs. So if other people want to jump in there, I was trying to watch and type at the same time.
Mhm.
So other areas that I think are really important to make sure that we're not missing any data points, because again, we want this to be a really comprehensive audit, not just, you know, the things that we typically would look at. All the things I think that Tanya showed us in the 5 labs are things that we typically look at. You know, we always look at attendance data. We always look at discipline data. We don't always look at activity data like clubs and who's represented in some of those groups. So it's nice that that's in there. We always look at enrollment data and demographics and things like that. So this next discussion is I'd like to kind of talk about some of those things, those qualitative and quantitative pieces that we don't normally look at, you know, like we typically aren't as a school team or a district team looking at. And then, so Sandy says, will administrators have access to view? Yeah, we didn't talk about that. John and Tanya, yeah, we should talk about who's going to be able to see this data and where it's going to live and all that. Good, thanks, Sandy.
Yeah, there's options to like give granular access to data so that people can have access to what they need to make decisions and not like access to everything. But if there are people who need access to everything, then it's the same data that's in Skyward. It's just compiled to make it easier to look at and make assessments. So if it's people who already have access to all that data in Skyward, there's not a really good reason not to give them access to this tool as well. And same thing for building administrators. If they already have access to whatever their school data in Skyward, then that's no reason that they wouldn't have access to that same data in 5 labs.
So basically what John's saying is if you're a principal, you'll be able to see your school specific data and your student specific and grade level data, but you won't be able to see the whole district. Is that what that means?
That is, yeah, that's what that means.
Okay.
Thank you for summarizing so nicely.
I just wanted to make sure, and the people who typically already see district, like all the data, will see all the district data. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so on any other good questions, Sandy? Thanks for, so all the administrators will be given access when maybe? Or like the schools to be able to?
I think they want to have another orientation with us. So they haven't, the same as they did with the 5 maps, they haven't even done the orientation. This is, I think, and Tanya's been working. Tanya, again, has done an amazing job, like working to get all these extra data sets and everything else, and really pushing the ball forward on this. But this stuff has just been popping up in the last week or so. Like every day I check, there's different stuff in there. So I think they're wanting to get it to a close to finished point and then have the other kind of internal orientation with the super administrators. And then we'll be able to start rolling it out district-wide. I would say hopefully at least in some fashion in the next couple of weeks. Do you think that's reasonable, Tanya?
I think so. We've been trying to set up one group in there just to see what we can do. And I think they have something turned off in the background that's preventing us from doing that. So I do think they're waiting for that orientation with us. Yep.
And I don't think we want to push out something that's not quite ready. And then people will have a bad taste in their mouth. But we also, it's really valuable data and it's a really valuable tool. So I think the sooner we can get it in the hands of the people who need it, the better.
Mhm. And I'm just thinking too, like, it's great for our principals to have access, but I would love to hear from principals and who else might need it, like maybe psychologists, you know, if they're making like multi-tier system of supports decisions, or like, I don't know, maybe a leader on your school improvement team or something, you know, like if you, I don't know if that's even feasible, but so why don't you guys kind of think about that too? Like who might, maybe department chairs, or, you know, I don't know, we can talk about that. All right, so what are some other data points that we want to make sure we're thinking about? So I put some very broad categories here in the agenda, and you guys can, we can add to that. So I started it off with, of course, we always look at our in-school suspension and out-of-school suspension. We always have all the data that's on our school report card, which is nice, Felipe, because that is like multi-year data that we can go back years and years and years. Now, unfortunately, a lot of it's COVID impacted for the last couple years. So, but at least we have data from like 17-18 and 18-19, you know, things that we can go back and look at pre-COVID, live and exist in the Illinois school report card. We've talked about 5 essentials data. Do you guys feel like that is relevant to, I know I've filled it out as a parent, I've looked at it as a principal. Is that something that would be relevant to our equity audit, the 5 essentials data? I don't know, what are your thoughts? Is it not as relevant because we don't have, you know, very many, we have small percentages of people who complete the survey?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the 5 essential survey or the data or how at all. I mean, I think
Yep.
that constructing our own survey and tailoring it for our needs, and you know, getting you know, having a stratified random sample that we really push to get a representative group surveyed would be of a, you know, I think more value. But that's
Okay.
my opinion.
Agree. It's one moment in time each year rather than multiple. And the questions really are not user friendly when you compare it to our panorama questions where they're just pretty basic.
Okay.
I do agree with that. The only issue is that so many people look at the 5 essentials since it's a standard survey for the Illinois report card. And I would just hate for us to, I mean, I kind of like would love for us to do both. Just me poking around on our schools most recently and seeing that some schools have the 5 essentials climate data and some do not from prior years. I do think that that's something that we should still consider, because when people are moving into the areas, they look at that.
It's still visible on their individual school report cards. It was not at the district level due to COVID impacts, but we still can see it on the school report cards.
Right.
Okay.
So Jennifer, we have a couple of different terms used in some of your bullet points. One says SPED status in one spot, and another spot it says students with disabilities. My preference would be students with disabilities, because that catches both our kids with individualized education plans and 504 accommodation plans.
Yeah, that makes sense. I took that right out of and maybe we should fix that in 5 labs, because I think under enrollment data, it said SPED status, but.
Well, and that may be for kids with IEPs, but I want to make sure we're catching the kids who also have 504 accommodation plans as students with disabilities.
Okay. Okay.
Would you want to be able to look at that data separately? So
Yes.
You would want that to be disaggregated.
Yes,
you don't
please.
want it all just lumped together into.
Correct.
So I'll add the both. I'll just put them both. Okay. Back to this other list. I think we definitely have our resolutions. We have board policies. Standards. That was just kind of a real general. I don't know if there are any specific standard level, like the standards or priority standards or anything that we would want to include in the audit. Any curriculum specific things, Kim, that you think, data that we are pulling from specific curriculum other than map, and I'm assuming that would be map, panorama.
We could do, we talked about today in one of our meetings, because we definitely want to see, you know, we could use iReady at the middle school. We could use BAS for literacy. So there are some other components that we could use to cross-reference.
Okay. Anything else other? Okay. EBF funding, we can definitely look at where we're spending our money, where we're budgeting most of our resources. I think Carol does a good job of making sure that we're taking, you know, free and reduced lunch status into some of our building level budget discussions and district level budget discussions, that we're spending our money in the places we need for the students that need it the most, I guess is a better way to say that. Family engagement. So what are some family engagement data points that we might want to include? I'm going to look at the family engagement person, Dion.
Family engagement is hard to measure because every school does it differently. For like school events, you could use sign-in sheets, but then, I mean, like even for the Parents Academy, we didn't have a large turnout, and I can send out a survey to families in different languages, but we always don't get a large amount. So engagement is hard to measure because there are things that happen at the homes, in homes of families helping with homework, making sure their children are prepared. Those are things that you cannot measure. So that's always a difficult one. I'm open to suggestions. I just don't have any ideas of how we can truly get a true picture of what family engagement looks like in our district across the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Anybody else? Is anybody doing something really creative with the way that they're tracking their data that we maybe could systemize, you know what I mean? Like use across the board? Or I know everybody does surveys, but again, that is just so hit or miss at every building and depending on the population and who's filling out the survey. But
I don't know if this gets everything that you want, but it's one data point is, you know, we are as a district tracking our students or our families that attend family conferences, conferences. And so it's not, you know, the whole picture of engagement, but it's it's one part. And so that could be included.
And we've been tracking that for years and years. So we definitely have multi-year data of who's attending conferences. Yeah, that's a really good one, Katie.
That is a really good one, Katie. I just looked at that, and since we have the option to be both in person or virtual, our percentages are looking really good. And in most cases, for most schools, they're over 80%.
Yep. But it's hard to judge engagement on like attending events too, you know, because I think depending on the event and if people have the ability to be at the event. So we'll have to think about that because we definitely want to make sure that that arm of the audit, you know, is still rich. So we'll have to kind of think about what data points we can pull. Is there any data that the parent liaisons keep that would be helpful? I don't know.
So what does the data have to be, John? Like what format? Because I know we're talking about, hey, we have these sign-in lists from parent-teacher conferences, but is that even actionable data for the program that we're running? Because it has to be in some sort of format for it to pull it successfully to run the same accurate reports across buildings.
So we have our like primary bulk upload from Skyward. That's all the normal stuff. And then anything that's keyable. So the keyable fields are student ID number or student email address. If it doesn't have one of those two things on it, then you would have to have somebody go and get one of those two things. Otherwise, you can do multiple uploads of multiple things, but you have to be able to key it off of the primary database, the primary student database. So if you can't key it to one of those two things, then it's not going to match up with the students.
So to do it accurately, we might have to put another system in place for how we're tracking. Like, so for example, we might have to do a different way of identifying who's coming to parent-teacher conferences so it can pull that data?
So Tom,
Yeah.
based on your question, I think I was not really good at explaining what we're doing. So what we're doing for this part is not just for 5 labs. So what we're doing for this part is we're trying to think outside the box of the things that are not already in 5 labs, things that we, you know, we already collect. I'm glad Elizabeth put SAT, you know, like all of those things, freshman on track, and, you know, who's passing Algebra 1, and we collect all of that, and we have all of that in 5 labs. What are the qualitative things that are not in 5 labs is what I'm kind of trying to generate a list of now. Like what are the areas across our district where we might see some barriers or some opportunity gaps or some disparities? Like Katie just put one in there that I think is a good example, PTA and PTO numbers. So we know, I'm not trying to call out different schools, but we have some schools that have really active, healthy, rich, robust PTA groups. And then we have a couple of our elementaries that is the complete opposite. So when we're talking about equity, if we know we have 2 or 3 of our elementary schools that have a really strong PTA that, you know, buys things for teachers and funds technology and, you know, puts Promethean and smart boards in every single classroom, whereas we have a building that, you know, doesn't have an active PTA at all, or like early childhood doesn't have a PTA or PTO. So I think that is a good data point to look at, because that does then cause a disparity in the students that are maybe in these 3 schools versus those 3 schools, right? So that's what we're doing right now.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. I probably wasn't clear enough.
No, it's, and I guess my question then is, how are we going to track this in a different place then? So this qualitative stuff is more, we're going to house that somewhere else.
Yeah, so that would be data for our external consultant who works with us on the audit. We'll collect everything and give it to them and expect them to kind of crunch it and do the data analysis pieces for us. Yeah. So our role as a team is to make sure we identify all the data, like what are all the things we want to collect and gather, and what are the meaningful pieces that we want to look at and have analyzed in our report. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Dr. Tatum, you asked about parent liaisons. They all have contact logs that they do keep track of, and they turn into me once a quarter. So that's another data piece, but they may talk to 10, 15 parents that they forget. So that's something that we could tighten up, but all of the parent liaisons do turn in parent contact logs. So that's another piece of data that we do have.
Okay, good. Anything else family engagement wise? Anything that I'm not thinking of? So like Joe, I know you do a lot of data collection at the middle school level. Is there something qualitatively that maybe isn't represented on this list, or?
I've been thinking, racking my brain in ways to kind of to share it, and I'm not coming up with anything that hasn't been shared.
Yep.
But I'm still thinking. So
yep.
I'll add in the chat box.
Okay. High school people, Elizabeth, Will, can you guys think of anything that I know we've talked about? Freshmen on track, 9th graders passing algebra. Kim, what other courses? Like who's, I guess, of course, we would put on here like AP courses and, you know, the diversity and who's enrolling in what courses would definitely be something that we would, I think, is that already in 5 labs? No,
I don't think we mentioned, and we should be able to pull it into 5 labs, is, you know, as we look, if students are really struggling academically, also looking and tying it in, who's participating with Splash 21st Century, you know, we could make that connection too.
Also, I think maybe CTE courses.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We should include in there.
And this was the first year we had college and career readiness data, because that's in our school report card. So we don't have the trend data for that, but at least we do have this year's data.
Is there a way to see data for students who like mobility between academic levels. So like a student moving from AP Prep to regular or vice versa.
Ooh. Yeah, that would be, well, I guess, as we look at each individual student and kind of get that student level data, we would be able to do that. Kim's looking like she was gonna respond.
No, I was looking at Katie's. I know she was asking about mobility. I mean, well, that's on report card, but it's not drilled down real specific.
Yeah, I just wondered about mobility. Thank you for saying mobility, because I was having a word finding problem, couldn't find that word. But thinking about like who's mobile, you know, which some of our students are the ones that are most mobile.
And that could be broken down by demographic for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm putting that under Illinois report card because it is on our report card, right? And is homeless status on our report card too?
Yeah.
Yep. Anything else like level specific data at early childhood? Is there any data that you guys are collecting that?
I have a few thoughts. So we do portfolio collection and rating in a system called Early Learning System, or ELS. But you know, I guess I've had a couple of thoughts if people have been talking. You know, when we were talking about the family engagement data, I think that leads to another conversation that hopefully could come out of this process, is the places where we're lacking data and do not have a systemic way in which we're keeping data. And I think that family engagement piece is a really great example of that. And then the other thing, when we were talking about curriculum, I guess one thing that I was thinking, we're putting on here data points from curriculum, but I think a real critical part of this is what curriculums are being used and in what spaces and who has access to them. K through 12 would be really a valuable conversation.
Yes. People are putting things in the chat. Oh, that's a good one. Tori added for parent engagement, representation on district committees. You know, like if there are people, volunteers, or I kind of do feel like on a lot of our committees, we have the same parents. We have, you know, a really active group. And when we reach out and say, hey, who's interested in doing this? We do seem to have some of the same people volunteer for those, even though we try to, you know, outreach and get more people or get different voices at the table. It's not really easy. I wrote down the early learning system / portfolio. Beth, anything else that is early childhood specific? That would be a qualitative data point that we'd want to add to. Home visiting? Like, do you, like, what are you, no, okay. Not during COVID, yeah. Sorry.
I was thinking about other spaces instead of my own early childhood. So I will think about that now and get back to you.
Okay.
Well, I wonder about even just our enrollments at early childhood, because it's not a, it's not a program that is compulsory attendance. So, you know, it's still a choice of whether or not our families are accessing early childhood. And so that, I mean, even that in and of itself might be an interesting point.
Yep.
I know I'm supposed to be thinking about early childhood, but and
no,
I'm
you're
sure
thinking for the whole district. You're part of this.
I'm sure this exists, but I think thinking about teacher certification and where that exists in certain spaces and where it doesn't, and that data point.
Well, definitely look at like recruitment and retention too, of like, sir. I'm glad you said that. The diversity of our teaching staff.
I think absences of teacher staff is a really fascinating one as well.
Mhm. Anything else?
Participation in professional development for teachers. Do we have ways to track that? Possibly. I'm just thinking about teacher growth.
How do we, I don't know that we've been doing a lot of that since COVID, but yeah, I guess.
Well, I mean, they're getting their CT, you know, their CEUs, so we got to be tracking it
Okay,
somehow.
that's true. Okay, yes. Okay, and Tanya added a few more data points in the 5 labs for us. Thank you, Tanya. Okay, anything else qualitative or quantitative that is not listed anywhere? Shauna, the SEAs, are they collecting other than attendance data and absenteeism data? Is there anything else, our student engagement advocates?
They should be collecting data on home visits and the interventions that they're providing, which students are in groups, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, what about like kids that have mentors, students that don't have mentors? Who need a mentor? I don't know. Do you think that's even relevant? Maybe. Yeah. Okay.
Mentors across the buildings. I think that would be a very interesting one to see how many mentors are in each building space.
Oh, yeah. Okay, it is almost 7 o'clock. So anything else? I wasn't watching the hands as I was typing. So if we think of anything else, you guys all have access to this document. Oh.
Do we collect data from alumni? Or from or students who don't finish, who leave, decide to leave? Do we collect any data, qualitative or quantitative on them?
That is something that I know was collected years ago. However, I don't know with the turnover in high school principal. I don't know if we have anything within recent years, but that is something that we are working with the new college and career readiness coordinator at the high school that will be full-time in January. So she's been working part-time this week, but that's part of the data that we want to collect.
So I put on here post-graduation data. I know we did used to, was it part of career cruising or I don't know, it was part of some tool where when students left the high school and got a job or whatever they ended up doing, we had that data for a long time. You're right, Angie. I don't know that we have it for recent years. Yeah.
Paul, you asked too, I think, about students who decide to leave. We do on our end, if they come to us at Adult Ed, we do collect some qualitative data about their experience and maybe what brought them here to our program.
Well, that's great. That's
we also
really great.
collect exit data from them about what they benefited from here compared to their, typical high school experience.
Oh, that's wonderful. That'll give us a lot of really good insight into how to improve their experience while at UHS.
Mm-hmm. That'll be great focus group data. So be kind of wrapping your mind around like some students that we can invite to be part of the focus group who maybe were part of were part of the district and now are back at Adult Ed or, finished at Adult Ed or got their GED or whatever. Yeah. Anything else? So we're not going to get to in the rest of our conversation, based on our earlier conversation about moving forward with with our facilitator, with Dr. Dubiel, I put in here some notes about the phases, those 5 phases. The needs assessment part, which is kind of what we started doing a little bit of that work, I guess, would fit in there in that area of really thinking about what our needs are for the qualitative multi-year data we need to look at and the quantitative data. So those were my notes from a couple of the, the board meeting discussion. And then when she came and presented to us that night here at the team. So you can look at that. And then these were the levels of support. So we're not going to have time to do that. And based on our conversation earlier in the meeting, I don't know that that would be a good use of everybody's time at this point right now anyway, but I did want you to see what the levels of support provided. Again, I think one of the reasons why it is helpful to go with an external facilitator who will be able to see us through the whole process. So Dr. Dubio would not just be here, do our audit, publish it, and then leave. She would then work with us to develop our equity implementation plan, as well as the professional development component, which we all know we need to bring back some of our equity trainings. We've not done that with everything else going on the last year and a half. So we really need to incorporate, again, some equity-based training for our current staff, as well as our new staff as we hire new people from year to year. So Dr. Dubio also has that as a comprehensive piece to what she would bring, and having one person instead of trying to work with 3 different professionals to do those, all of those pieces, the audit, the equity implementation plan, and then the equity professional development. It does help to be able to have one facilitator to lead us through all of those discussions. So that was another reason why systemic educational equity was one of the groups that kind of made it through the vetting process, because she's able to do all that and is very hands-on and does those things with us in person. So in the interest of time, we're not going to go through those. And again, based on our earlier conversations at the beginning of this meeting, I don't want to waste people's time talking about that. So I will turn it back to, looking at our agenda, turn it back to Paul for adjournment.
Sorry, it's a mute. Is there a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
So moved.
I'll and a second, I hear. All in favor indicate by raising your hand or just saying yes. Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Good night.
What time was it, Paul?
7:03.
7:03. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.